Terminator is out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear. And it absolutely will not stop. Ever. Until you are dead.
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
You're listening to Spit and Polish Presents Pictures Powwow. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Swinski.
And I'm host_Bartek.exe.
Has stopped work, has stopped responding, yeah.
And refuses to close. Open Task Manager.
And the task manager is you, listening people. We are doing our show Pictures Powwow, our weekly show in which we talk about movies that have come recommended. The recommendations, whether they be from myself, Bartek, or you, the listening people. Bartek, this week is a recommendation from yourself.
Yes, it is.
What movie did you recommend?
The movie that I've recommended for this episode is The Terminator.
The Terminator?
The one and only.
Not just Terminator? The Terminator?
No, because that's the title, The Terminator.
Isn't it weird to you it's called The Terminator?
Yeah, I know. I always call it like Terminator 1, but no, there's a the there.
It's don't get it confused. Like, it's not Terminator. It's the Terminator. There's only one. It's the one. Like, this was going to be the only one. Like in the series, there wasn't going to be others. It's like if Alien was called The Alien. You know what I mean? Or Predator was called The Predator. Like, you can. Okay, we're critiquing the title already, but you recommended this, so obviously you have some attachment to this. But before we get into that, listening people, if you have not seen The Terminator and or any Terminator film, I'm just gonna put a blanket warning on that. I mean, we won't discuss anything major, but like talking about the first Terminator will bring talk of others in the series naturally, I do believe. So if you haven't seen those films, I mean, good luck. Like, keep living life, I guess. I don't know, but we're going to be talking about spoilery stuff, so you've had your time. It's the Terminator. If you haven't lived in the world and seen pop culture happen, then I guess you don't know anything about it, huh?
It's like me and Alien, though.
Yeah, but you know stuff from Alien.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like, if someone said to you, oh, a chest burster, you wouldn't be like, what's that?
Ah, Spaceballs.
Yeah, you've seen Spaceballs, or you've seen references, and like for Terminator, if you've seen The Simpsons once, you've seen if you've seen The Simpsons at some point, you've seen a Terminator reference. I think of Principal Skinner.
Yeah, I was too.
You can't. There's a T-1000 reference with Homer in the when he's best friends with Ned Flanders, and he's got the golf clubs, and he like hooks on to the car. That's a T-1000. That's a T2 reference with T-1000.
All right. Yeah.
Or when he fades through the hedge, it's very reminiscent of when the T-1000 fades through the bars. We're not talking about Terminator 2, Judgment Day. We're talking about The Terminator. So Bartek, why did you recommend this? What's your history with this? What's your relationship with this movie? Tell us all.
So this is a film that my mum genuinely loves, so that's why I ended up seeing it. So
Isn't
a lot
that
of
the reason you see any movie? Your mummy?
In terms of ones coming out that she wants to see, that is a big factor in it. But this is one that she saw like in cinemas way back in '84 and has like a lot of stories about it. So yeah, when I was old enough, I think maybe it was late primary school, she got me into it. I saw the 3 films that were out at the time, and I genuinely liked them a lot. And I've seen all of them multiple times. Don't quite remember the third one very well, but the first 2 definitely I have a lot of attachment to, and I've always been like jumping back and forth between which one I like more. But in all honesty, it's sort of like this duology thing. I can watch either one.
That is the eternal question that, you will piss off people if you like the first one and you don't like the second one, or like vice versa. Like, it's one of those things where it's like people have their camps. I'm a T2 camp person, people. I like Terminator 2 more. But, so, yeah, my history with this is I've seen it many times. Not as many as T2, but that's just me, isn't it? I'm trying to think what to say. The Terminator is one of those movies that I've probably seen like 7 or 8 times, while Terminator 2 I've probably seen upwards to like 40 times. Because it was always on TV. Now, Bartek, as we've talked about on the show before, you were never one to watch TV when growing up, really. Like, whenever I brought up things that were on Australian television, you had like, I don't know that. Like, I never watched The Mummy, Ryan, or Jumanji, or all these classic things that were on Australian TV, like, every year, like, 3 times a year. And Terminator 2 was always on. Different cuts of it. Sometimes they would show you the director's cuts. Sometimes they would just put on the normal cut. Sometimes they would have it edited down for TV. No matter what, always watch it. But never did they really play Terminator, because the Terminator was an R-rated movie at the time. Now it's an M-rated movie, which is interesting. Like, I have a Blu-ray copy and it's rated M.
Yeah, I've got DVD and it's M.
But it has, as a warning on my DVD, it has, mature themes, violence, and a sex scene. Like, it clarifies it's just one.
Should I quickly check what my DVD says?
If you like.
Okay, bye-bye.
While Bartek's doing the DVD checking, yeah, with the Terminator series in general, I've also seen those first. I've seen the first 4, and then after Salvation, I gave up, and it seems like that was a good decision to make, from what I understand. I don't think I've met anyone who genuinely loves Star Trek, Terminator Genesis, or I've not heard a single person really talk about Terminator Dark Fate, which came out recently.
Yeah, medium level violence, medium level coarse language, low level sex scene.
Well, I got a sex scene, so thank you. So Bartek, we'll talk about the Terminator, but just talk about the series. So you haven't seen any past the Terminator Rise of the Machines?
I've seen Salvation, but I haven't seen Genesis or Dark Fates.
It's just Fate. It's not Fates. It's just
okay.
Dark Fate.
Terminator the Dark Fate.
Because, our fate is what we make of it, Classic. So what do you feel about the Terminator franchise as a whole beast, especially when you go back to just what's the Terminator? Because to me, the Terminator stands as just like, it was clearly just to be one film. It was never meant to be a universe, but here we are, all these decades later, and there's a cinematic and television universe.
Yeah, the trivia really gives a lot of details about how it was mainly just going to be one film, but James Cameron had ambitions that he didn't manage to meet.
Money.
He didn't manage to meet with this film, and a lot of those ideas carried on to the second. Yeah, I remember seeing Salvation in the cinema and not really being very fazed by it in much ways. It didn't have really, like a wow factor, because when you have a modern day setting and you have these things from the future, there's an instant factor of like, damn, modern day, sensibilities, technology have to go up against this thing that most people won't believe exists. And then Salvation's like, nah, it's set during the war.
And it's all drained of color, and people are miserable, and Christian Bale shouting all the time.
Because the lights weren't being worked on.
And it was directed by Mick G, director of Charlie's Angels.
Okay.
Yes. So, but we're not talking about those. The Terminator franchise is weird to me because I think I hate it. Because those first 2 movies, like the first movie, when you watch it, it's clear that it should just be this. And the second movie does some, pulling a rabbit out of its butthole trick of making it so that we can have a second movie. But there comes a point where the Terminator franchise just has kept going, but also it has been so ingrained in pop culture, to me in a bad way, or at least in a very obnoxious and annoying way. Not just references, but, whole genres of film have now been invented that are just ripping off the Terminator movies, and I kind of hate it, honestly. Like, I still watch the first 2 movies and I enjoy them as movies, but when I start to think about them as a thing that has affected the world, I'm like, my brain just gets a little bit cross about it, because I'm just like, there's more bad stuff that has been generated because of the Terminator franchise than good, in my opinion. But that just may be me. I don't know if you have any opinion on that, Bartek. I mean, you live in the world. You play video games. You play, you watch movies and shows. You've seen how they've been affected by these films. What do you think?
I mean, I noticed the references. What do you mean in terms of like actual cliches and stuff, though? Like,
The classic. There's so many Terminator. There's a period of time where Terminator and Mad Max were easy to rip off. So you have your sleazy B grade, C grade movies, but you have those classic like, oh, it's a machine that's come to kill them, and it cannot be stopped or bargained with, and or it looks like a person, but it's not actually a person. It's an evil like Alien, Mad Max, and Terminator. Three things that generated a whole bunch of stuff of ideas that have just kept going and going and going in pop culture and in movies and TV shows, all this kind of stuff. And just for me, it's just like, it makes me tired.
well, evidently, I'm not being tired by it.
No, evidently not. You're too much into your animes. So let's talk The Terminator, 1984. Yes, 1984.
Yes, yep.
So what are your thoughts on it before having to rewatch it again for this, and what are your thoughts now having to rewatch it for this?
It had been 9 years since I'd last watched it, so I was very much looking forward to watching it again. And then when I rewatched it again, I had a good time.
What about it really stuck out?
Well, I guess the thing that sticks out about it is the thing that I think makes it stick out compared to even Terminator 2. The fact that it is just this very raw and to the point film about a normal woman who is in danger from this machine that cannot be stopped, and it's basically this like horror film. A very raw horror film where you're just trying to survive against this thing.
And that thing is Schwarzenegger. Do you prefer good guy Schwarzenegger or bad guy Schwarzenegger?
I mean, I grew up on the Terminator to the point where I think that was the only thing I'd seen of him growing up. Whenever I saw him in something else after the fact, and hearing him talk in what is, I guess, his normal voice, not monotone, it always seemed a bit odd to me. In terms of it, he's definitely more menacing when he's a bad guy, but there's a lovability about him when he does play a good guy.
Because in T2 he's a good guy. Spoiler
Yeah.
alert. And like you've said, you're in that balancing act of which one do you like more. And it's like, well, T2 he's a good guy, and that was like the interesting spin in that movie, is he's a good guy.
Yeah, I was thinking of his whole filmography. I wasn't thinking just T1, T2.
No, but that's true. Like, honestly, when I think of Schwarzenegger, like, I can't think of too many overt villain bad guy roles. Like, this is the one that springs to mind. I know there are people out there going, oh, what about this role? But like, I think this is the most iconic bad guy role he's played. And then for the rest of the time, he's the hero, like in Predator or Commando or Jingle All the Way or stuff like that.
In the trivia I was reading, it was saying that his agent was almost really against him doing this film because he shouldn't be playing villains, so maybe that sentiment somehow stuck around.
Now, Bartek, I watched this on glorious Blu-ray, and it was really great because in Blu-ray on a big TV, you could see Schwarzenegger's dick. And he's walking up towards the Bill Paxton gang, unlike in the older one where it's like, oh, you can kind of see it. In Glorious Blu-ray, you just see his junk full on, and it was
too dark for me.
And it wasn't too dark for me. It's just weird stuff like, oh, the gloriousness of high def gives you Schwarzenegger dick in the Terminator.
I heard that it also lets you see his eye when his eye should be missing in the I'll be back shot.
I didn't really notice that. Can we talk about the I'll be back? Because that's the most iconic thing in Schwarzenegger's whole entire career, and it's in this movie. Does it still work for you? Like when you watched it the first time, did you already know about it? Because when I watched Terminator for the first time, I'll be back was already a thing known to me. So I've always wondered for myself what it would have been like to have seen that moment and not have any exposure to that moment, like, would that I'll be back moment be genuinely badass if I have not seen it regurgitated in everything?
To answer your first question, I saw the film almost 20 years after it was made, so I definitely knew the line. I think walking in, that was like the one thing I did know about it. In terms of its impact, it's not really meant to be played as like a badass thing, I don't think. I mean, it's just a very understated thing that makes you question, like, oh, why is he leaving? And then the follow-up is the realization of like, oh, that's what he meant. So I don't know,
don't
I think...
know. I think it is pretty badass when he does the inspecting and then he just leans forward and says it in a very demanding fashion and then just walks out and then he just devastates him with a car.
I mean, it's the same purpose he delivers all his lines with, so I don't think it's really meant to stick out. I mean, the line wasn't intended to be, this huge, pop culture phenomenon.
No, but I think it was intended, from my understanding, to be a significant line because Schwarzenegger, rightfully so, was like, "Oh, wouldn't it be I will be back because he's a
Yeah.
robot?" And James Cameron was like, "No, no, 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 no,
I
no."
don't tell you how to act, so don't tell me how to direct or whatever.
Classic James Cameron. And here we are. But do you think it has, like, I know what you're saying, but now it's been regurgitated so many times, like, where in the regurgitation it's a badass line. Does it? Like, I don't know. Like, when I see the scene, I'm just like, yeah, it's still pretty cool, but the franchise itself has shit on that line so hard that it's a joke. Like, I swear in the newest movie, apparently he says, "I won't be back."
That's very on the nose.
Well, in that movie, he installs drapes, but that's another time. That's the story for another time. But it's,
I'm intrigued.
Like, you're intrigued, are you? No, you're not. Schwarzenegger installing drapes as a T800. Yeah. He's not a T800 in this, is he? He's a different model, right?
They give some weird, like, serial code thing because Carl Reese alludes to the fact that an older model of his was the T600, but he doesn't tell us what exact, like, T whatever he is.
I think he did. I swear he was like, this model is the T105, something like that. I can't remember.
He had some other sort of serial code for him. I think some, like, production thing that's meant to be distinct from it. I don't know.
It was interesting. But yeah, for me, the iconic "I'll be back," it's so annoying how much it's been spewed into my face that when I do see it, it doesn't really have any impact to me. What does make an impact to me is the following sequence of him murdering all the police in that station. That has more of an impact to me than "I'll be back" and then he smashes with a car. But
it's iconic scene versus iconic line.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like, I kind of wish that sometimes things can settle down so that they're still great when you see them. That's one of those. Schwarzenegger has that in his whole catalog, all these badass moments or weird-ass moments because he has a funny accent. The classic, "get to the chopper" in Predator. It's just a scene in Predator, but now it's like this iconic stature of a scene because it's been mocked and imitated so much.
This is the scene where the thing happens.
Like I said, I've probably seen this movie 7 or 8 times, and it's always interesting to come back and see it because I'm so familiar with Terminator 2, so it's always quaint to come back and see this movie. It's quaint because all these ideas, like you said, James Cameron had ambitions that he couldn't meet at the time because he was a new filmmaker, he didn't have a big budget, and it's a weird idea, and they didn't know if it was going to work. And it's quaint. Like, the Terminator vision is really quaint in this. Like, they don't use the Terminator vision until very late in the movie. And him mimicking voices and, like, all these things that the Terminator itself can do, as well as the iconic things of the franchise. Like, I forgot that when Schwarzenegger transports in, like, when he arrives, he doesn't have what I consider the more iconic...
The sphere.
The sphere and, like, the imprint on the ground and it's red hot. I forgot. I was like, oh, they don't have the classic sphere thing. They have the ball of lightning happening, but no red hot ground underneath. Okay.
Well, when a character nearby says "what the hell" in a low voice twice in a row, then the sphere doesn't happen.
Can we talk about how corny the extras were in this fucking movie?
What the hell, goddamn son of a bitch!
He stole my pants! That was my favorite. Or, yeah, there's so many corny extras and background people. Like, there's a scene where Sarah Connor's wanting to use a phone the first time she hears about the second Sarah Connor being murdered, and she phones up her apartment. And there's just a guy standing behind her looking at her, and it's supposed to be, like, in the background, him looking at her is supposed to be a bit intimidating, but it's just, like, a random guy. And he does all
Yeah, I
this
remember
weird
that.
acting where he's, like, looking at his watch, and it's just, like, he's acting. So we both like this movie a lot. Still, is the feeling. What about this movie do we love is the thing. Like, you talked about these horror elements, and that was a fun little thing for you this time round, but like, what about it really sticks with you? Is it like, is there certain ideas or images or scenes or characters that really just stick with you with this film?
Definitely. I think the lead three are all very good. Sarah Connor, Kyle Reese, and the Terminator.
And what about those characters?
Well, I guess the big thing with Sarah Connor, especially, is that she is so distinct and disconnected from the entire future plot as we know it, and we have that drilled into our heads from the fact that she's just this, waitress. She's got her friends. Some of them have like kind of douchey cliches, but they're not like played up to hate her or anything. So it feels like she's a very normal person.
Yeah.
People she loves. She's got a little. She has a boyfriend on the side who's a bit of a dick. She's got a pet. She's got a life that's completely normal, and within the span of not even a full day, it all gets turned around on her, and it's not even like the world changes. It's just that there's something in the world that's after her.
And she knows the world will change, and then that leads her to be a paranoid nut job in the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's that journey of having an imminent threat happening to a normal person, and it's even more effective that she's just a normal, regular woman. She's not even that good of a waitress. She's just a person, and you're watching her fall in love, learn the truth, and eventually defeat the Terminator. And it's a very satisfying journey and arc. And the Terminator, he's not really a character. He doesn't really have any character to him. He's just a thing. And because he's Schwarzenegger, and it helped kind of be one of the things that made him like this, and Conan the Barbarian. This kind of helped make him, and I think in retrospect we add, at least for me, in retrospect you add more characterization or more stuff to him because we know who Schwarzenegger is now. But when I actually watch the movie, he doesn't he's there because he's a big guy. Like, that's what he's there for. Like, he's a big dude. He doesn't really have any character to him. He's just a big threat, but it's more the idea of what he is in this film that makes it work. Because this is what I love. It's a simple idea. What if a thing from the future came back to kill you so that the future can be altered for the benefit of the thing wanting to kill you? I think that's a great idea. This thing just happens to look human, but it's a killing machine. That's what I love.
Yeah, and as a little addition to that, when you have the scene of Kyle Reese, first explaining to Sarah that it's a machine and all of these things, like every single line just reinforces the simplicity of the film while also emphasizing how serious it is.
Exactly right. And that's what's brilliant about this first film, and I think this is what people may like about the first one over the second one, is it's very simple. In a good way, like how people really enjoyed Mad Max Fury Road or the Mad Max movies, is they're simple. Go from A to B. This is, thing, it's a cat and mouse game. This thing's chasing me and I'm running away from it. And that's the story. Well, the second one and the third one and the fourth one and fifth one and sixth one, it all becomes more complicated. They're exploring the time travel issues or the sci-fi-ness of him being a Terminator robot, and what is humanity is being explored. Well, in this one, there is none of that. You can't bargain with him. He's not going to budge. He's just going to kill you. He's going to kill everything in its way, and that's it, the story. And it's very, very fun to watch it just be so simple, especially when, like I said, it's been decades now, and there's been so much expanded universe crap. Other movies, a TV show, books, comics, whatever, games, that just complicate this, what was a very simple premise. Thing wants to kill you. That's all it is. That's all this movie is, and that's why it's okay that Schwarzenegger doesn't have much of a character. What he does have is presence. That's what's important. He has a presence to him. He doesn't have much of a character, but that's fine. That's not what this movie needs. It's like if in the Halloween movies, it would be weird if Michael Myers had a weird kind of character to him. In that, he's just like a guy who likes to kill you, and maybe he'll do it in a funny way, but that's about it. And that's what I love about this movie, is it's just pure, raw simplicity. That's the best thing about it. And I do prefer the second one because I do like the complications of it. I do like the fact that it's expanding these ideas and exploring them more, and also the action is 10 times more interesting because that is more of an action movie, while this is more of, like you said, a horror movie in terms, like, you see a lot more gruesome stuff, like he punches through a guy, throwing
The Terminator
people.
itself gets really messed up in a humanistic kind of way. Like it's rotting and losing its eye and stuff.
Yeah, and they murder the police. That's pretty brutal.
All 30 cops.
Yeah, all of them. Isn't that great? And that's what I love about this. And okay, here's a question for you. Is this film dated in a bad way for you? In any parts? Like in a bad way?
Honestly, I don't think so, no.
I think you got special effects that today's standards you go, ugh.
Oh, right, the stop motion robot at the end.
And when he changes his eyeball and stuff like that, there's stuff like that you go, look, that's bad, and it has dated the film and probably wasn't even that great at the time. And that's fine, because it's a cheap movie, it's a simple movie, and you just have to get over it. And if you can't, then then this isn't for you. I think the film is very dated in a good way. This is very 80s. The music, the clothes, the attitude, the filmmaking, the budget, the look, all this stuff is very 1980s. Schwarzenegger looks very 80s, his hair, all this stuff. But that's what's so charming about it. It's a part of the look. It's a part of the feel. Its datedness is a quality to admire about it. There are some films that are timeless, and some films that are dated, but that's a part of the charm. It's like when you watch an old 1950s movie. They feel like they're old 1950s movies, but that's a charm, and there's nothing wrong with this feeling like an 80s movie, and that's very retro and in the now. The 80s.
And it was an intentional thing, because this film was made from a 2029 perspective of what the 80s was like.
Yes.
Yeah, you saw the footage at the beginning, right?
Of course. Yeah, the smart ass. Was it 2019? I thought it was 2027 when he says it in the interrogation room.
I said 2029, but if it was 27, then I was wrong.
You're wrong. I can't remember, but what other things do you want to talk about or explore or mention, Bartek?
One thing that I did notice this time around was that even though Kyle Reese and the Terminator are not that different in size, their clothing helped emphasize a difference between them, where Schwarzenegger had clothing that was a bit too small for him, and Kyle Reese had clothing that was a bit too large for him. So it really gave them like this contrast.
I love that that the Terminator was like, "Give me your clothes," all that, and he wore the gloves, even the little gloves. Like, why did he need those? Like the
So
rest,
he won't leave fingerprints.
but they were fingerless gloves.
Yeah.
And he takes them off, and then he puts them back on. It's great.
I was reading in the trivia that apparently his first interaction in the film was gonna be with like an old lady who sees him and he's naked and powerful, and she gets afraid, so she puts her car into reverse, bumps into something, then puts it in drive. But in that process, Schwarzenegger gets to her, and apparently when he gets into the car, he does the exact same thing, like puts it in reverse, puts it in drive. So maybe there was meant to be like a thing of he's still learning how to behave human as the film goes on. So maybe he thought like, oh, well, I have to wear all the clothes. I don't know. Maybe that was it.
I mean, he was learning how to speak.
Yeah. And in the second film, we get an expansion where he actually talks about how he's a learning computer and stuff.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, that is true. And those are little nuggets that I enjoy. Him learning how to speak. Those things do give him a bit of character, but they're not explored upon very much. I like that his eyebrows burn off after he runs through fire.
Mm.
It's a
and
nice
with the
touch.
with the whole character thing, like it doesn't really give him character because we're shown like the mechanics behind it. Like, oh, this is what I'll say to make myself appear human, like the "fuck you asshole" thing. Like he has a list of options and he picks that one.
Which was neat. I love that touch. I love that he just had a little apartment that he found so he could hang out. Obviously, he murdered the guy there, but I like that he had it. His little bachelor pad.
The Terminator hideout.
Let's talk about the cops. They were personal favorites of mine. I love those two guys, Lance Henriksen and Paul Winfield. They were fun. I love those two. I love Paul Winfield and how much he dismisses anytime Lance Henriksen speaks. Basically, it's like, yeah, shut up. Like, you could clearly tell like they're colleagues, but they don't like each other very much, or at least Paul Winfield doesn't like Lance Henriksen very much. And it was very weird to me. They get killed, but off screen, which was fun. Like you just have it on Schwarzenegger shooting them. Like you see,
we see.
Paul Winfield gets shot, but he's still alive, and then Lance Henriksen starts shooting, and then you see the reaction to it.
Yeah, we don't see Lance Henriksen get shot, but yeah.
Yeah, like you don't see them get like you see them getting shot at by, like you don't see them actually getting hit properly. Like Paul Winfield gets shot, but he's still alive, and then yeah, it's just like, oh, they're dead. Like after that, like,
they make up for it in the second film. When the black guy dies, we see the moment he dies.
We see every sweat and every gasp of last breath.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miles Dyson, yeah. But I really enjoyed those two cops. I thought they were fun. I liked them. I liked their rapport. I liked the little gag about give me a cigarette and he's already got one. Paul Winfield, and I liked when he was like, okay, I'll talk to the press. You know, maybe they could help, and all that was really fun. It added a realism to the world in a good way. It was very fun. There was
and also
go on.
Also this like little element of like, oh, but they don't know what they're up against.
They don't know what they're up against, and nor should they, because he's clearly crazy. Now, my favorite character in the entire Terminator series is Dr. Silberman. I love his journey in those three films that he's in. I love him. He's great. He was a great thing to keep around for those first three films. I love him in the third. He's the best thing about the third film, in which he's recalling the events of the first two films.
Doesn't he like dismiss them, but then he sees the Terminator?
Well,
or something?
like he's clearly traumatized about them, but he's like trying to dismiss them as, but they couldn't have happened. No, too ludicrous. And then he sees Schwarzenegger with a machine gun, and he just runs away as he would.
That's like one of the only things I remember about that film. Yeah.
Hence, it was the best thing in it, right? Because it was a good comedy thing. Unlike woman Terminator makes her titties bigger, that wasn't a good comedy thing. That was because we all like Dr. Silberman, because in all realism, he's right. These people are crazy. Like, if you think about it, like, from a real world perspective, like, you don't know that it's a time travel story. He's like, yep, they're all crazy. These people are nuts. I love that he leaves the iconic scene. Like, he gets his page and then he leaves, and then Schwarzenegger comes into the station. Like, he gets
his
away.
and his act of leaving didn't trigger the alarm
Yeah.
for Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, right. Like, he could have bumped into him, or who knows? It would have been crazy.
Although when Schwarzenegger was leaving, that didn't trigger the alarm either.
No, I guess not. But
Yeah, plot hole. This film sucks.
plot hole. Wait, which alarm are we speaking about?
The one at the entrance of the police station.
Oh, is there an alarm there? That
Well,
goes
because
off?
when Silverman was leaving, like, he stopped at the door because something started
Oh,
beeping.
it's his
What?
pager, because he had
Oh,
that
it's his
happen. He
page.
had that happen when
Oh.
he was talking to them in the station about Kyle. as
My
well.
mistake. Okay,
Yeah.
film's good again. I'm an idiot.
Plot hole, ding, CinemaSins, ding ding.
Plot hole. It's in my head.
Yeah, dum. But I loved Paul Winfield's character. He was great. I just loved him and the cigarettes. It was very fun. Lance Henriksen is there's a few people here that are James Cameron staples. Bill Paxton, R.I.P., as the punk guy at the very beginning, with the tire marks on his face, which I love. I miss Bill Paxton. He was one of those actors. Like, Bartek, you've said that you haven't seen the Alien movies, and he's in Aliens, and Bill Paxton was great. He was always a breath of fresh air. Like, here's how good Bill Paxton was. He was in Terminator, Aliens, and Predator 2. So
And Thunderbirds.
and Thunderbirds and Twister. He was in all these iconic franchises or movies or creature features or whatever, and he was great. And watching it again, seeing him here, I was just reminded of that we lost such a great talent, and it was like, man, Bill Paxton, he was so goofy in this. But I missed him.
Fuck you, asshole.
Yeah, was he the one that had the wash day line?
No, I think it was the other guy.
Yeah, I think so too. The one that got punched through. That guy. He had the wash day line. He got punched through. I kind of wish that the
Bill
Terminator...
Paxton had
Go on.
Bill Paxton had the "fuck you, asshole" thing.
Fuck you, asshole. I kind of wish that the Terminator movies would be as violent as this one was, where, like, he punched through a guy and then his fist is, like, covered in, like, really dark red blood.
And he's got the heart in his hand.
Yeah. Oh, man. I wish that there was more of that. And,
That's another iconic thing.
like, Terminator 2 has its moment of violence, sure, where the T-1000 stabbing people and whatnot, but I don't know. It feels more, just, off-putting in this. Maybe because also Schwarzenegger goes and kills lots of women. Like, he's just brutally killing women, and very much, and brutally so, like unloads the clip kind of kill.
Yeah. But I guess also one of the things is that, like, this threat that not only is in the modern day, despite being, beyond all scientific knowledge, is that because of its intelligence, it only really kills things that would get in the way, or it thinks that it should kill. Like, there are plenty of scenes where it, like, walks past someone, even with a gun in its hand, and it doesn't kill them, just because, it's technically blending in at that point.
It killed Dick Miller with his own, at the gun shop.
Yeah, because, he would have, called the police or fired on him, so it was like, you'll be in the way, I'll kill you.
You recognize Dick Miller, of course, from Small Soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
It was nice to see him, and he died. Oh, Dick Miller, he was always fun too. Yeah, this movie was a blast to see again. Okay, my favorite part of the movie, and it always has been, is when he gets to the motel at the end, Schwarzenegger, when you have the final chase. When he gets there at the little crappy motel, and he, like, opens the door and starts shooting, and they're not in there. My favorite part of that is that music that plays. Like, we're used to the Terminator music, the dun 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 dun, and all these musics. And then the second movie really amps up that music, and it's better in the second movie. But my favorite thing is, I wish the Terminator franchise kept the zany bizarro 80s music that plays when Schwarzenegger
whenever he
bursts
chases them.
in. Why didn't they keep that throughout the series? I love
Yeah,
that.
I'd forgotten about it, but it was really good and like really distinct. Like this is the theme of Terminator being after Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor.
I guess it's because it's not badass. Like, once it gets second movie, the Terminator's cool. You know, he's got
I
the
guess-
leather jacket, he's got the big motorcycle, he's got the shotgun that's inside, the rifle, the shotgun that's inside the box of roses, he's got the hair. He needs to be awesome. Well, that music's very zany.
Yeah, but also I guess it kind of plays more into the horror thriller tone because, you know, it's like a lot more fast paced and manic.
True, true. Another funny thing when it comes to music is we know the iconic Terminator lilt and music, the da 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 da, and then like the da da da. I forgot that they used a love ballad version of that when they fucked.
I did too. I forgot that as well.
Amazing, amazing. I love it. It's a positive. That's a ding in a good way. Ding, a point.
In a more immature film, the dun 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 would have been timed alongside thrusts or something.
We didn't get thrusts, really. We got lots of boob grabbing and holding hands. Very tastefully done sex scene overall.
Yeah, a lot of people online apparently say that this is like the one film that needed a sex scene for plot.
I mean, it did need it for plot. How's she gonna get
Yeah.
pregnant? Plot hole if she didn't by him, and because
They should have had sex after he died.
yeah, they should have yeah, they should have done that.
You know what? That's probably what happened in the 1991 remake because Kyle Reese lives in that.
Yeah, true, true. Spoiler alert for the 1991 VHS remake.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Was it even VHS? I don't even know how it
It's
was
shot
released.
on video. It's
Yeah.
shot on video. Oh, what, you think it was a theatrically released movie? You've seen it.
No, I thought like it'd be like back alley, like, hey, we got Terminator.
Yeah, on VHS.
Yeah.
What do you think it was on? Betamax? No,
Laserdisc.
laser discs. They never took off properly, but people have them. I'm trying to think what else is there to really say, because this is one of those movies that's so iconic that it kind of just stands on its own. Oh, I like that she had a lizard
Mm-hmm.
as a
Pugsy,
pet.
I think his name was.
I call him Jub Jub because of The Simpsons. Because that's I can't remember if it's Patty or Selma has that as a lizard pet too. Jub Jub.
They live together.
It's just you and me now, Jub Jub. I like that we had a jump scare with that lizard when her dumbass roommate, who loves music, by the way, Bartek. That's her
I think she
character
does,
thing.
actually.
She really loves music. And she loves listening to it on headphones so that she doesn't hear her boyfriend being brutally murdered in the other room.
Or the phone ringing.
Or the phone ringing. It's a plot device. That's what it is. Ding, CinemaSin.
It's a plot. It's a character flaw.
I love that there's a jump scare with a lizard. I haven't been this absorbed in a jump scare since The Boy Next Door had a jump scare with old Stan Lee.
Yes.
I haven't, like, there was a few jump scary type things, but you know what's nice? They didn't have the music sting. It was just like a thing happened, like when Sarah leaves and she bumps into the roommate's boyfriend guy, who was funny too, by the way. Mr. rehearsed his sex call.
Yeah, put on the wrong person, then once the right person came, just repeated it.
He was ready. He was ready. He wasn't going to let anything stop him, you know.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you want to say about the Terminator?
I don't know. It's always the thing. I always blow my load really early. I guess we haven't talked much about Kyle Reese.
Yes, let's talk about Michael Biehn.
Michael Biehn. I think, and I've already alluded to this a little bit, like he has a couple of speeches in this film, and I feel like all of them, even though they are a bit long, all of them are really effective. Like almost every line he says just adds more to the stakes, to the information, to just everything. Like even in the silly 1991 remake, which like lifts a lot of dialogue, you know, line by line, even if it doesn't make sense for their continuity. Like the lines, I still hear them in the real Kyle Reese's voice. Like I just think they're really good.
And it's so good that they hired Australian actor Jai Courtney to play him in the Genesis movie, you know? Yeah.
Well, they got a British guy to play John Connor.
Well, yeah. No, in Genesis they got another Australian to play him as well. They got actor man. I can't remember his name, but he's always in god awful movies.
Well, British Christian Bale.
Christian Bale played him in Salvation, and in Genesis they got.
Oh, you were talking about Genesis. Sorry.
Yeah, in Genesis they got Jai Courtney, the Australian, and then they also got the Australian guy again, who's forgetting his name. I'm forgetting his name, but he's in the Matthew McConaughey movie Serenity, about where Matthew McConaughey likes fishing. I'm forgetting that actor's name, but Jason something. But he's in a bunch of crap. Yeah, it's funny. Here's the thing too with Kyle Reese. You know, you said it before, but I kind of disagree. Like, him and Schwarzenegger are very different looking guys. You know, he's a smaller, like, he's a fit dude, but he's smaller. You know, he's just a normal human man, while Schwarzenegger's like an Adonis creature. Like, he's not a real...
He's Mr. Universe.
Mr. Universe. Yeah, you know, he doesn't drink milk. That's for pussies. He drinks beer. That's for men. And some, stuff like that. But with Kyle Reese, yeah, he's a guy. And what I like too is the flashbacks/forwards of his life, when he was living in the Terminator world. And that's the thing that was always interesting about these first two to three Terminator movies is the hinting at of what the future world is like, and then you would naturally assume, a movie in which we take place in that world would be great. But no, not really. I know there's a lot of people who love Terminator Salvation, and I feel sorry for those people, but because I think it's fucking garbage to the point in which it made me never want to watch a Terminator movie again. But I've always thought, like, it's always interesting in this Terminator movie, we get to see the world in a very sad light. Like the little girl watching the TV, then you see the shot, it's actually a fire inside the TV set, was cute. And the dogs and how they're used, and just like what a nightmare world. And but also like how it's just very upfront, like there's a woman that gets exploded and Kyle Reese just reacts like another one, like that's the world they live in. And Kyle Reese has never had sex or doesn't believe in love or hasn't had anyone he's fallen in love with, because what's the point?
Yeah. And
also because he loves her because he has a photo of her. Which plays nicely into the narrative. Yeah, Kyle Reese was good, and it's upsetting that he dies, but of course he has to, because he's the dad, and he dies before the war.
Long before.
No, don't tell me, I don't want to know.
We could say he died in the first battle.
Oh boy. Yeah. And that's about all I can think of to say about the Terminator. It's an iconic film for good reason. I think in the long run, just to give my wrap-up thoughts on it and the series, on a level, I think its brutal simplicity is the charm about it, and it's a great thing about it. But also in the long run, it's also a detriment because, look at where the Terminator series is, and you look at where it came from, and you kind of go, maybe it should have stayed that way. As much as and I love Terminator 2 more, but like, I look at the Terminator and its impact on things, and like I said, it's more annoying to me than it is enjoyable. But as individual films, those first two films are still in entertaining films. This one is simple, brutal, and effective, and I'm glad that it helped launch Schwarzenegger into our eyeballs. Bartek, final thoughts?
Yep. So I've always been of the opinion that like Terminator 2 is the better film, but the first film I gravitate a bit more towards it, and I do jump between the two. Maybe if I rewatch Terminator 2 after this episode, maybe I'll change my mind. But yeah, the brutal simplicity of it, the way that they just focus on a few elements and do them really well, just really, really sticks with me. I very much enjoyed this film. And the stuff about, the future films and its impact, that's a conversation beyond just this film. It doesn't really bother me. If they want to have Terminator, whatever, then they can. I will add though that one of the questionable Christmas gifts that I've gotten over the years is that
Yeah.
someone gave me a Terminator Salvation like art book or something. So I've got that sitting on my bookshelf, and I've never really picked it up. I just kind of see it sometimes, and think, "Oh yeah, I own that."
Yeah, but there, I mean, there is something to be said about those further installments in the Terminator thing, because it does come a point, Bartek. You have to question like how much of twisting and contorting an original idea to the point of where it's no longer recognizable, and or there's always that debate or question of can you take a thing so far and ruin it or twist it or malform it to the point in which the original product is tainted? That's always something that's always a very long debate when it comes to ongoing series of things. Like, we've seen Sherlock Holmes adapted so many times in so many different ways, and it's like, or Agatha Christie, all these kind of things have been explored so many times that when you go back to the original source material, are they tainted in a good or bad way? Those are the kind of things. And the Terminator, unfortunately, is one of those ones where it's like, I think there has been some tainting because of the legacy it has made and the series of movies that have come after it. That you do I look at it and go, oh, I wish that it stopped here, is a thought that comes into my head. And I shouldn't be thinking that. I should be going, oh, this is fun. But
Well, you only think that because you're a dirty milk drinker.
yes, you got me there. So, Bartek, thank you for recommending The Terminator, and
Thank you for existing.
it's fate is what we make, But
Dark Fate.
Dark Fate. Okay, so in Dark Fate, Terminator Dark Fate, Schwarzenegger. Spoiler alert for Terminator Dark Fate. I just need to tell you, Bartek, because it's so funny.
Yeah, tell me.
So, from my understanding, not having seen the film, my understanding is the Schwarzenegger Terminator in that movie is a Terminator that came after Terminator 2. Like, the events of Terminator 2 happened, and they have a CGI de-aged Linda Hamilton and Edward Furlong. And he just comes over when they're at, like, a restaurant or something and just shoots John Connor, thus ending everything. And then the movie's, like, decades later, and Schwarzenegger's robot's still alive and around, and now he has a wife, and he lives in a cabin in the woods, and he feels bad about having killed John Connor.
Okay.
And now he makes drapes, and him and his wife don't have sex because he weighs 400 tons, and he's like, our relationship is not physical, and he's a joke, and he says, I won't be back, and all of that. That's where Terminator Dark Fate came with that.
That sounds like a parody that you'd see in like The Simpsons or something.
Doesn't it? My big thing is, like, how did he learn to feel bad? Because in Terminator 2, it's a whole plot device. Like, it's a whole plot thing of reworking his brain so that he feels things or learns things. Like, they have to fuck with his chip to get him to be able to adapt. That's the point.
The end of his character arc is, I know now why you cry.
I don't know why you cry. And
But it is something I can never do.
Thumbs up. Yeah, and so that's that Terminator, the Terminator, not the
The
VHS.
genesis of Terminators.
Terminator Genesis, where it's Genesis is spelt wrong, but whatever. It's spelt with like a Y. So, Bartek, it is my pick for a movie next week. And I, like you, tossing up between a couple of different films, It's a tough,
like I did,
tough. It's a Sophie's choice. We're not doing Sophie's
first world problem,
choice,
but yeah.
But I'm going. Both of them are older films that I was tossing up between. Very different tonal films, but I'm going with my gut, and I'm gonna say we're gonna talk about next week a 1950 movie.
Okay.
With Jimmy Stewart.
Because
I don't think you've seen much of Jimmy Stewart.
No.
If anything. I don't know what you've... Maybe a Hitchcock. I don't know. Have you seen anything with Jimmy Stewart?
Not that I can recall right now. Was he in Psycho?
No.
Then, yeah, I don't know.
So we're doing Harvey. 1950 film Harvey with Jimmy Stewart. I'm not going to tell you anything about it. Just go in. It's a fun movie. It's a pleasant movie. It's got Jimmy Stewart. Of course it's going to be pleasant. He's a nice guy. He was a nice guy. Even though when you actually look at Jimmy Stewart's filmography, he played a lot of mean and people or assholes or drunks as well as just nice guy Jimmy Stewart. But Harvey, we're watching that. So Harvey, 1950. Hopefully people can find it easily. We'll be talking about that in depth. So that will be that. Bartek, a pleasure as always to be podcasting with you yet again.
Pleasure, pleasure, pleasure.
Pleasure. Do you think the Terminator is fully functional? Like, do you think it can fuck?
It can learn to, or at least simulate it.
Because it's a cyborg. Let's not forget. That was a big thing.
They keep using that term.
Well, he is, by the logic of the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, in a weird twist of it, like it's part human, part machine, but the human part's the artificial part.
Yeah, it's very weird. But Bartek, podcast with you soon again, very soonly. Can the listening people find us anywhere? Where can they find us online?
Online is where they can find us, and specifically online, you can go and search for us on YouTube, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and many, many others. Typically, if you can just Google Spit and Polish Presents, you'll probably find us anywhere. And you can also contact us on Twitter at Spit and Polish, at Spit Polish Pre, but the full name's there. We're on Facebook as well. We do a lot of stuff there. We always looking for recommendations. You can post them to us there, or you can email us at spitandpolished@gmail.com. That's spitandpolished@gmail.com.
Yep, all the information's in the description as well. So have fun with that. So until next time, listening people, remember to be kind to each other, but also that if you are listening to music with headphones on, be careful, okay? Because there could be a lizard, could jump out at you and go ooga booga, and then you be like, oh, I'll get you. And then before you know it, your boyfriend's dead, and then you've been shot like 1,000,000 times.
Yeah. Good thing that we never do that. Fucking idiots. I would also condemn anyone that podcasts with headphones on.
Yeah. Oh no.
Wait a second, that's what we